We are so happy to welcome on set today David Gould, who's the Director of Marine and Environmental Affairs for the town of Plymouth. Welcome, David. Sorry, I'm losing my voice.
Thank you.
Can you just briefly say what is your purview? What are you in charge of in this position of Director of Marine and Environmental Affairs?
So the department is made up of 3 divisions: Animal Control, Natural Resources, and Harbor Master.
Okay.
So we take care of all the open space and natural resources in town, herring runs, the beaches, like Long Beach and the Shorebird program, as well as working in the harbor, waterways, dredging, piers, wharfs, all of that.
Oh, so you have a lot in your purview.
We do.
Yeah, people
especially
think,
here in Plymouth.
people think, oh, you're in the harbor only, and you're not.
No, not at all.
Okay, let's talk dredging.
Okay.
So what's our history of dredging that we've had done so far in Plymouth Harbor?
So dredging's been talked about in Plymouth for a very long time. Some areas in town have been dredged recently as 40 years ago, and other places haven't been dredged in 50, 60, up to 70 years.
Okay.
So there's been a lot of talk over the last few decades about getting the harbor dredged. It's the #1 priority that was listed in the harbor plan, so there's a lot of emphasis on trying to get that work done. Personally, I've been working on trying to get dredging done since 2004, and we've, over the last few years, finally gotten that done.
Can I just ask one question
Sure.
on that? Is dredging always used so that ships and boats can come in, or is there another reason that you dredge?
Sometimes it's for improved access. Sometimes it's to expand an area.
Okay.
Sometimes it's actually to remove contaminants
Okay.
from the harbor as well. So
Okay, so it's not
sometimes
all
it's all
about
those.
Okay, it's not all about just boats.
Nope.
Okay, so I'm sorry. So 2004, you've been
Yeah, so we've been working since 2004 try to get dredging done. And essentially there's 2 projects that have been done in the harbor. One's a federal project, which is done by the Army Corps of Engineers,
Yep.
which is the federal navigation channel that comes in, what we call the turning basin, and then the federal anchorage area,
Okay.
which has most of the moorings in Plymouth Harbor. Then there's a second project, areas outside of Army Corps jurisdiction, which have been partnered with the town and the state that we've been working on. And so those areas were in and around State Pier for the Mayflower 2,
Yep.
in and around Town Wharf, which the Harbor Master Shack is currently on,
Yep.
and then in and around T Wharf, which is a new wharf that was built about 3 years ago.
Okay.
That was a project in partnership with the Commonwealth.
Okay. Now, how much did Plymouth 400 play into getting state funds for dredging?
So it was very helpful in the timing was perfect.
Serendipity.
So, yeah, so like I said, we've been working since 2004, trying to convince, essentially, at least for the Army Corps work, it needs a congressional authorization.
Okay.
And so it needs an act of Congress to do that. And so we've been working very hard to try to get that over many years. Certainly the ability to name a special event like
sure.
the Plymouth 400th event,
Yeah.
and making sure that we can have some of the events that we want to have, like the Maritime Salute,
Yeah.
raises the attention and the profile of that request, and certainly was helpful in that.
Absolutely. How much does dredging cost?
So dredging is incredibly expensive undertaking. Largely you're taking large equipment and having to mobilize it into a certain area, and just the movement of that material, that equipment, can be very expensive. And then there's the cost factor in terms of what you're actually dredging. So if the material is deemed suitable in terms of its chemical and biological makeup, then it can go for what we call offshore disposal.
Okay.
At a couple of designated sites
So you could
off
just
the
take
coast.
all the stuff that you took off the bottom and put it on a barge and bring it and dump it in a
If
specific place.
Right, and
Okay.
if it's clean enough, we can do that. If it isn't, then it has to go to what we call an upland site. So that means it needs to be taken out of the harbor, in this case, dewatered.
You dry it out.
You need to dry it out
Yeah.
before you can truck it.
Yeah.
Put it into a truck.
Yeah.
And then drive it somewhere and pay the tipping fee, so a landfill. In the case of the material that we've done recently with the Commonwealth, that material was actually barged all the way to New Jersey for disposal.
So you need to do upland disposal on that one.
Correct.
And who tests the sediment that comes out to determine whether it can go offshore or has to go upland?
So we'll work with an engineer to get those samples, goes to a certified laboratory for analysis, and then we send it to the permitting agencies, and ultimately EPA will make a determination if it can go upland or go to offshore site. In this case, unfortunately, all the material that we were looking to dredge with the Commonwealth was deemed to have to go to an upland site. We were hoping that at least some of it would have been designated clean enough to go offshore, driving down the cost again, but that did not happen.
Okay, nothing you can do about that. What are the benefits to dredging?
So in Plymouth, we have quite a few benefits. So first and foremost, and back to your comment about 2020, was we wanted to make sure that we dredged the Mayflower berth
Yep.
so that the Mayflower 2 could
Mayflower
come
2,
back.
yep.
And so that's now down to minus 15 feet at mean low water, which allows the Mayflower 2 to come back for the 400th and allow her to sit and not be in the mud.
Which is
So
always-
that's
always a
fantastic.
plus.
So that's
Yep.
a huge plus.
Yeah.
Some of the other areas in and around the T-Wharf,
Yeah.
which is a new wharf that was built a
Yeah.
few years ago, what we're able to do is dredge the inside of that, which means that new pier,
Yep.
all sides are now usable for vessels. So the navigation channel goes right up to it, which is minus 15 feet, but now the inside is also dredged out.
Mm-hmm.
There's some floats in there where people keep their tenders to access their boats
Yep.
that now will have water mean low, so that'll be accessible. And then the federal project, which is the navigation channel coming in,
Yeah.
is down to minus 15 feet as well. And then the federal mooring area, which means that we can hopefully offer more moorings
Yeah.
because we have an extensive mooring list.
Yeah.
So now that
Oh, I
we have
bet you
greater
do,
depth
yeah.
and a greater area, we'll be able to get more boats in.
Sure.
And then because the navigation channel is down at 15 feet, we'll have the ability to bring in some cruise ships, and we've already gotten good news on that front already.
So let me just, for people that don't understand the 15 feet. So at dead low tide, they're still going to be 15 feet below at any hull on any ship?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And how much does is it called draw? How much do ships
Yeah, and
draw?
that depends on the vessel and
Okay.
the weight and the size.
Okay.
Right, which was always the issue with cruise ships. So they could get in at a high tide, but then
they
they
have to
always
go
had
out
a
at high tide.
plan
Right.
out at high tide, which was not an ideal situation because they want to be able to come and go during any tide in any event and make sure they
Of
can meet
course.
their next port.
Of course.
And so now that isn't a concern anymore.
Okay. So that's good that we can have. They're not going to be the huge cruise ships, right?
Right, and I think that's a great point because I think there's some misperception that we're getting, the large Carnival cruise ships.
Yeah.
Those aren't coming to Plymouth.
I just went on one that was 1,100 feet long, and it's ridiculous.
So these are the smaller ones,
Right.
But they're pretty fantastic trips. They go on historic ports up and down New England. Traditionally, because of the limitations, if we got one visit a year, we'd be pretty happy with that. But this year, with the dredging being completed for the Army Corps and for the Town and State project, with what we've done, the cruise ships have already said they'll come in 5 times this year and 5 times in 2021.
Great.
So that's already
So you already have the dates already blocked off.
the economic benefit is
It's
already
huge.
there.
It's huge.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Okay. When you take the dredging material from the bottom, I have 2 questions. One is if you grab silt from the bottom, doesn't just more silt fall in?
Yes, that's
Is that why it takes so long?
it can, depending upon the material in which you're dredging. And so there's what we call a prism, a footprint of how we dredge, and it specifies the slopes.
Okay.
Usually try to make a 3-to-1 slope so that sloughing that you're mentioning doesn't happen and
That's
just
called
fill
sloughing?
in.
When it goes-
Sloughing,
fills back in?
absolutely.
Okay.
So we specify where that is, where those slopes are,
Oh,
and to what
okay.
grade. And then there's also what we call an over dredge. So if you're dredging to minus 8 feet,
Yeah.
you typically dredge to minus 9 feet.
Yeah.
So a 1-foot over
Yep.
dredge just to accommodate some of
Got that, yeah.
some of the situations that you're referring to.
Yeah. And where does this silt come from? I mean, it doesn't come from the top, does it?
Right. So a lot of times it's movement of sediment,
Just-
erosion from other areas
Okay.
that will fill in. Certainly since vehicles have been in prevalent use, we have a lot of runoff from roadways. So when you have roadways, you have stormwater,
Yeah.
and the stormwater is oftentimes discharged to the low point,
Yep.
which is often the ocean.
Yep.
And so uncontrolled stormwater that discharges into the harbor.
Yeah.
And we, as you know, we sand and salt the roads a lot
Yeah.
in the Northeast.
Yep.
And so a lot of that sediment over years and decades
There it
eventually
goes.
adds up getting
And it'll
into the
stay
area.
right there. Why would it go out to sea when it can stay right in your
And
nice
that's
enclosed
certainly the
harbor?
case, the area that we're looking and focusing on for this town meeting request.
Yeah.
There's some large outfalls there.
So
in
let's
and
talk
around
about
Town
this.
Wharf.
So all the stuff that's already been dredged, which
Mm-hmm.
was both town and state funded,
Yep.
now you need another section dredged.
We have one priority area that we couldn't get to based on the funding because of all the
All
material
the
having to
upland
go
stuff
upland.
you had to do, yeah.
So the last remaining area that we'd like to do is the area between Water Street and Town Wharf.
Okay.
If you're looking across Water Street at the Harbor Master Building, it's right in there where Captain John boats, the
Yep.
party boats,
Yep.
harbor master boats are located. It's that one area in there. There's about 17,000 cubic yards in there that we'd like to get out.
Can you still use it if you don't get it out? What's the?
We can. At dead low tide, though,
It's a problem.
It's become a real problem.
Okay.
And so the economic activity that's in that area for
Yeah.
the town and for the harbor is pretty immense in that, as I just mentioned, there's the party boats, the fishing boats that go
Yeah.
in and out, the Captain John whale watching boats, the public safety boats and the harbor master are there. There's a lot of tenders that folks use to access their boats that are sitting in the mud.
So it's not worth the
It's only
risk
going to
of
get
not
worse.
doing it. Right.
Yeah, it's
right.
only going to get worse.
Okay. And once that's done, the harbor's done.
Once that's done, we have hit all of the priority areas that we've wanted to, or the town's wanted to, for the last 40, 50, 60 years, yes.
And when do you foresee you would have to do this again?
That's a great question. And I can't tell you when,
Okay.
and it's difficult to say simply because a lot of harbors get dredged routinely, so they know that every 20 years
Yep.
they need to.
Yep.
Because of the extended amount of time that Plymouth Harbor has not been
Right.
dredged.
You don't really know.
We don't really know how quickly some of those areas will shoal in or fill in.
Right.
But I certainly don't want to go another 50 or 60 years without dredging.
Sure.
We'd like to do it 25 to 30 years
Yeah,
to keep
just
up
have
with
a
it, so
plan. Yeah.
we don't have such a large project to do in the future.
Okay. So a town meeting has to approve that.
So what we're looking for right now is a requested town meeting for 1.25 million, which would come from our waterways account. So the users that use the harbor
Yeah.
pay fees that go into that account. So it's people using the harbor that would be paying for this work.
So the money's already in a fund?
Correct.
Oh, so
And then the other 1.25 would be from the Commonwealth as
Okay.
a state grant match.
Yeah.
The same way we funded the most recent project, which was half from the town and half from the state. We would follow
great.
the same way.
Great.
So we don't have any general fund requests or anything like that. It would be paid out of waterways and half from the Commonwealth.
Great.
So we hope we're able to secure the funding and be able to do that one last bit that needs to be done.
Yeah. And my one last question I have is, if you have a really bad storm that comes in, can that drop a huge amount of sediment in like the mouth?
It could. It could alter certainly the navigation channel out, especially like something like Long Beach.
Yeah.
Out at the point and move some of those areas like Browns Bank shifting or something
Right.
like that. That's certainly possible. That's a pretty neat thing about what we're talking about. It's always dynamic and it's always changing. So you never know how long things will last based on storms and the change.
Right.
But it's also what makes it always interesting.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So dredging will be an article at town meeting, and then you'll be done.
Then
Can you
we'll be
get it?
done.
Can you get it done before? Well, when could you get it done?
Yeah, so the
if it's
funding would be in
approved?
the spring.
Yeah.
We would come back the next dredging season, which would be in the fall of 2020.
In the fall of 2020.
Correct.
Okay. You could start that.
Yep.
Now, for the area that you want to dredge, though, there's lots of boats there.
Yes.
So does that mean you have to wait till they're in dry dock, or
So we'll have to move some boats to
Or move, yeah,
We have a
to accommodate.
restriction as to when we can do work based
Yeah.
on things like winter flounder that we have can impact. So
Yeah.
we would have to move some boats. We would have to rearrange some things. But we've gotten quite used to doing that over the last couple of years.
and I'm sure all the people that have their boats there would be happy to move them, knowing that it's going to get
Yeah,
dredged.
once it's done, you see the benefit.
Yeah.
So it'd be pretty terrific.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We've had a wonderful talk with David Gould, Director of Marine and Environmental Affairs for the town of Plymouth, about dredging here on Town Talk.